So we can, for example, look at, say, China, which unfortunately uses its technology to do mass surveillance and suppress dissenting views and information.
Whereas in the West, we don't have mass surveillance.
Oh, no, I was going to
You're surveying the shit out of
my
it.
next line was the West, of course.
Come on. A little bit of
I was trying to be inclusive.
self-awareness here.
East and West.
You know, Google is surveying us just as successfully as, you know, the Chinese Communist Party.
Are we in control of big tech, or is big tech in control of us?
From time immemorial, the human condition has been marked with a tragedy, the tragedy of our relationship with technology, and the beauty, the wild beauty of it. All those machines, from Talos to Frankenstein to the invisible hand, fill our hearts with horror that maybe they're taking over. Maybe they're failing badly. Maybe we are victims of it. This is not a new problem. What is new, and this is where I want to concentrate, is that unbeknownst to people like Tim, who are doing very interesting work in Silicon Valley, in Shenzhen, wherever those big tech companies are located, as I said, unbeknownst to them, they have invented a new form of capital. You see, capital predates capitalism by tens of thousands of years. From the first moment that we created a tool is a produced means of production. So you create a plow, not because you want it, but because you want to use it in order to produce corn. That's what capital is. The steam engine was produced to produce textiles. For the first time, these folks, and I point at him because he's on the pan, they've created a mutant form of capital, because what lives in these phones and tablets is not a produced means of production. It is that as well when it helps operate machinery. But in the social media, in what we mean daily by big tech, it produces an exorbitant power to modify our behavior. For the first time in human history, our behavior is not modified only by poets, novelists, politicians, vicars, and so on, but it is modified directly by produced means, by machines. That is what I am particularly concerned with, has already usurped, overturned what we knew as capitalism, has replaced markets with fiefdoms, and it has put in train a process by which we face a clear and present danger of total social failure, total economic fragmentation. It's not the fault of the machinery. It's not the fault of the algorithms. It is our incapacity to reshape our social relations, the way we relate with one another, our relations of power with one another, so that we can make good use of the machines rather than become victims.
So I think, an absolute statement that big tech has stolen our autonomy is simply the wrong way to think about it. Let's take a step back for a moment, and I think there may be a better way to think about things are in terms of two concepts I'd like to put forward, and that's in terms of trade-offs and responsibilities. So let's start with the first one. When it comes to trade-offs, that's simply asking the question of what do we want and what is the price we're willing to pay for it. And so when it comes to big tech and freedom, the trade-off that's relevant is the trade-off between freedom to and freedom from. So undeniably, tech has bolstered our freedom to do a great many things. Today, we now have unlimited access to information and goods from all over the world. And so tech has really democratized the world's resources to all of us. Also, the ongoing revolution in artificial intelligence promises to boost our ability to do many creative and productive things. So that's really where tech shines. It enables us to do great many things. Now, of course, the trade-off is that this requires tech to become more embedded in our lives. And so the consequence is that we have a shrinking ability to have freedom from technology. And that's clear in our dependence on technology. We rely on online services like email, maps, and payments. And so it's very hard to imagine how we can fully disconnect from technology. So we can see how technology itself is really kind of navigating this tension between being empowered to do so many things while also possibly being constrained by how technology shapes and limits some of our autonomy. Indeed, we might even often cede autonomy to our tech, right? Because we want it to do some of the work for us. We want to delegate, say, fighting fraud and doing content moderation. And so we see that there is this tension between doing things and letting go of things. And so that brings me to that other point I mentioned, which is about responsibility, right? We want our systems to be built responsibly because we are giving control to them, and not necessarily in a bad way. We want it to do some of the work for us. Now, it's a little bit, of course, vague and open-ended what it means for technological systems to be responsible. So maybe we should look at some examples where things have gone poorly and things are going better. So we can, for example, look at, say, China, which unfortunately uses its technology to do mass surveillance and suppress dissenting views and information.
Whereas in the West, we don't have mass surveillance.
Oh, no, I was going to
You're surveying the shit out of it.
My next line was the West, of course.
Come on. A little bit of
I was trying to be inclusive.
self-awareness here.
East and West. Okay.
Google is surveying us just as successfully as, the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay.
Maybe more successfully. Sorry for the interjection, but I just burst.
Yeah, there are definitely examples here in the West. I mean, close to home, Cambridge Analytica, right? Privacy breaches, harvesting personal data to do targeted advertising and sway elections. But of course, there are good things about technology and progress being made. We have, for example, GDPR to do as a regulatory agreement to state how we ought to use personal data. In the interest of time, what I want to say is technology has trade-offs, right? As I mentioned, it can be used for good and bad. And so we need to think about how to responsibly use technology, just because, again, it depends on which hands it falls into, and it can be used well or poorly. So that's my position.
I mean, with technology, it almost seems like we don't know what is behind the technology and how we're losing autonomy and control. So where are we on that? Are we free to choose?
Well, to avoid speaking in the abstract, let me give you an example. A new app was created, went out 7 months ago in the United States, which is, you can think of it as Uber for nurses. So in the hospital system, where nursing jobs are being denigrated, constantly losing their stature, and they're being casualized, now there's this new app where nurses can get different postings, different days, different hours, different weeks. And this app combines data on particular nurses with their credit history and their credit card debt, so as it knows which nurse, male nurse, female nurse, is more desperate for cash on particular days and reduces the rate offered to him or her during that day. So, then of course, you have Palantir and you have Microsoft and you've got Google and you've got Amazon, who are running today the war machine of Israel, the total surveillance of every Palestinian and every Israeli, actually, in the land of Palestine, of Israel. And in this context, your question, I think, is redundant. Of course, we do not choose which technology. You've got a tiny number of big tech companies which make decisions usually against the views of people working in these companies. So again, I have to mention Google, because Google started quite a few years ago. Remember the motto, do no harm. And I think that most Googlers, and I met quite a few of them, as I was telling Tim at the beginning, I had the privilege of addressing them and giving a speech in their original campus. They were people who were enthusiastic about this idea of producing new services, democratizing the tools and so on. And you saw what happened with Google. Eventually it got into defense procurement, and it went to bed with the IDF in Israel. It bought Wiz. It is working with Elbit in order to weaponize the manner in which migrants are being monitored at the US-Mexican border. So existing malignancies in our political and social sphere are being weaponized by this exorbitant power of machines that have escaped the control of the people who are creating and designing them in these big companies.
Okay, but seriously, I mean, look, Google is a very large organization, right? It's almost 200,000 employees globally, so it's almost like a country, right? And you know, given that it's such a large organization, there are kind of you know, different pockets and things like that. So I can only speak from my personal experience, but certainly you know, one of their mottos is respect the user, right? And so I mean, I don't want to focus too much on my own personal experience, but you know, we do undergo constant training of how to, you know, you should never access user data without needing the use case, et cetera, et cetera. So I do, you know, very much feel the ethos of responsible data usage and whatnot. But let me go back to maybe the more global issue. So you know, there's just me as an employee, which you know, I do feel, at least on a day-to-day basis, that you know, I'm not working for like a tobacco company or whatnot. But in terms of back to this bigger question of you know, the role of big tech and the speed at which technology is moving, I mean, let me just take a step back and you know, what I want to say is that in some sense we don't really have that much control over many things. You know, we don't have that much control over, you know, the way our food is made, how our clothes are made. And so I think maybe it's good to set the baseline of what it means to have control. So maybe that's one thing I want to say. The world is a very large place, and we really just don't have that much control over anything. So you know, maybe you know, technology is not an exception in that regard. Maybe the other thing I want to say is that at least here in a capitalist society, there is a form of empowerment such that, you know, these technology moves quickly, which means that rival companies form all the time. So companies need to make their apps useful for the broader public, because either people will not use them, a rival will open up. And so what I want to say is that, you know, notwithstanding all the negative consequences of capitalism, you do need to make your services useful to people. And there is a kind of public accountability, right? When there are data breaches, when there are failures in the recommendation algorithm, or when, you know, LLMs produce, you know, bad content, there is a corrective mechanism, right? It's not like a totalitarian society, at least in our society, where no matter how bad things are, it's going to stay that way. You know, companies do react to bad press. And so I think there is a correcting mechanism.
Tim, you said that, you know, people who actually produce the algorithms, they never do it with bad intent. I agree. I'm sure. I mean, there might be some real bastards out there who are designing algorithms with bad intent, but I don't believe there are. And even if they are, they're the exception. But I want to use a particular example of dual-use algorithms. So there are algorithms that have emerged from Google and from others that are the epitome, the apotheosis of the human spirit and achievement. So the fact that we have AI programs which design antibiotics that can kill bacteria that otherwise would have killed people in hospitals. This is great. This is, you know, congratulations, well done. But we have to remember and not forget that the same kind of algorithm has been used by, I won't say anything about you know, your employer, by Amazon, in order to use whatever data is being collected in Amazon warehouses, because, you know, in Amazon warehouses, workers have one of these things strapped to their wrist as they're going around the business in the Amazon warehouse, taking, you know, packages from here to there. The machine tells them where to go. It monitors them and so on, but it also monitors who they talk to, how the proximity of different workers together. All this data, using the same kind of AI algorithms that design beautiful antibiotics for killing bacteria, the same AI program predicts, it's a mathematical statistical model for predicting the probability that Kathy or Bruce may start a union in one of the particular warehouses. And when that probability estimate exceeds a certain threshold, then either they get fired or that particular warehouse is mothballed. So it's not the AI fault. It is the fault of, whether these are rights enhancing technologies or rights annulling technologies. It depends on our labor law, on the extent to which unionization is made possible or effectively undermined through mafia-like behavior of big tech and other companies, whether we understand that these technologies give you exorbitant power if you are the sole owner of it. And if you care about democracy, you can't possibly believe that the people who invent these technologies have the right to have exclusive property rights over them. As I said in that talk that I gave at Google, I said to them, congratulations for having created human rights. Because the right to use the Google search engine when it was really well before AI, it has become almost a human right now. The problem is that if you have invented a human right, you no longer have the right to own it. It needs to be socialized. So socialize big tech.
I feel like tech is not being given enough credit. I mean, just as a show of hands, how many people want to give up Google search, Amazon? Would they really want to go back? I'm just curious.
Did I suggest that?
No.
I suggest we socialize your company
Sure.
in order to use it more productively.
I mean, where would we have been during the pandemic if we didn't have Amazon, Zoom,
Again,
right? I mean,
we want your technology. We do not want the property rights over it by a tiny, tiny minority who use it against the interests of humanity.
Okay, so I don't disagree with that. So maybe this goes into this question of digital rights. So I think that absolutely makes sense. I mean, they really are an extension of the right to privacy among other rights, and I don't think, at least here in the Western world.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below.
With a free trial, you can enjoy the full talk and thousands more.
Thank you for being part of the conversation.